Round 16 is officially a wrap. We're going to run through all 7 matches from the weekend, all the news, all the best players, all the winners, all the losers, everything you need to know from the weekend of football. So sit back, enjoy. This is the All Aussie Rules Footy podcast. Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We've got another episode of the podcast coming your way today. It is episode 44 of season 2025. We're flying through the season. This is our round 16 review episode. You'll notice we've rebranded a little bit, updated the logo, updated the background. So hopefully it looks a lot better. I like the logo, so let me know what you think down below. Don't forget to hit the follow button or subscribe depending where you are. Obviously this goes out on YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you follow the podcast, hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Or go across all of them and hit likes and follows everywhere. You can do that as well. Let's jump into football because that's what we're all here for, and there's no point wasting too much time. Round 16 hasn't officially wrapped up at the start of recording, but I'll record the last game after it finishes. But we're just getting a head start on the recording, so we're going to go through all 7 games from the weekend. We'll look at all the best teams, all the best players, all the information you need from the weekend's football. Then we'll wrap up with our footy tips from the weekend. And as we always do on these review episodes, we will go through the Brownlow and MVP leaderboards as of the end of round 16. So that's everything coming your way today. Let's jump into it. Round 16 started Thursday night football. It was Port Adelaide Carlton, and it was pretty much loser is done for the season. And boy, oh boy, were they done. Port Adelaide smacked Carlton. 50-point winners in the end, and pretty much no matter how you look at this, it was a dominant performance by Port Adelaide and a really lacklustre effort from Carlton. Quarter time was 5-0, 5-4 to 0-3. Half-time, it didn't get much better, 8-10 to 1-6. It continued on 13-11 to 4-9 at three-quarter time. And then, finally, it only took all the way to the final quarter, but Carlton won one quarter. And that was the final quarter, but not by enough, not by nearly enough. They lose by 50 points here in the end. Some decent accuracy from Port Adelaide, not so much from Carlton. This was just one-way affair, though. There's no two ways about it. It was absolutely Port Adelaide with a better team in this game. We'll have a jump into some of the stats, the key numbers from this game. You look at some key things here. Port Adelaide had like 54 more disposals in this game, so they definitely had the football a lot more than Carlton. Disposal efficiency, almost 76% Port Adelaide, pretty decent number. 70% for Carlton, so a long way off the opposition in this one. Metres gained, 6,100 for Port Adelaide, just 5,200 for Carlton. That's like multiple football fields less throughout a game of football. Ball was in the forward half of Port Adelaide for 54% of this game, so it was all one-way traffic pretty much across the board, no matter how you look at this game. Carlton did do okay in clearances, as we kind of hinted they might in the preview episode, but as soon as it got out of the clearance game, it just kind of turned into an absolute domination by Port Adelaide. 12 extra inside 50s, 8 extra intercepts, so they looked after the ball better, Port Adelaide. Carlton just couldn't get it going, especially early in that first half. Ends up 34 to 25 shots, so an extra 9 shots in favour of Port Adelaide in this game. Maybe could have been a little bit closer, but overall it doesn't matter in the end because the better team won on the day. You look at their chaining, it's probably one of Port Adelaide's better games. Probably not quite up there with their first half against Hawthorn. And a couple other games that they played early season against some low-ranked teams when they absolutely destroyed them. But a really solid all-round performance, I think, from Port Adelaide, pretty much. 2 goals, 3 from kick-ins is unreal from Port Adelaide in this game. 52 to 19 from stoppages. We just went through the numbers. Carlton won clearances for the game, but could not score from them. 2 goals, 7. So some inaccuracy, but overall Port Adelaide did really well in that side of things. Turnover was pretty similar, 43 to 40, so the increase in turnover numbers from Carlton didn't hurt them too much on the scoreboard, but it was that defensive half transition. This is where Port Adelaide dominated this game. They had a chain to score of 30%, so almost 1 in 3 chains that they had throughout this game, they got a score. Their defensive 50 to forward 50 was exactly 1 out of 3, so that's pretty good numbers as well. And defensive half to forward 50 was almost 42%. That's getting close to 1 out of every 2 defensive half transitions went into the forward 50. So some really good ball movement. There's 2 ways to look at that. Were Port Adelaide really good or were Carlton bad? It's probably a mixture of both, but Port Adelaide managed to score 8 goals, 5-53 from the back half. And Carlton only managed 2 goals, 4. So massive differences across the board in this game. It was just, no matter how you look at it, it was clear that Port Adelaide were the better team on the day, and Carlton, their season's really struggling at the minute. There's no 2 ways about that. And it's probably just going to peter out, you'd think, into a nothingness for the rest of the year. They're currently now 11th on the ladder. They're 3 games behind 9th on the ladder, plus percentage. So with 8 games to go, you'd say that's probably too much to ask. Port Adelaide keep themselves in it, maybe. They're 2 games plus a lot of percentage behind 8th and 9th, so they're going to have to do a lot here in the back half of the year to give themselves a chance. But by winning this game this week, they have given themselves at least a sniff if they can play some good football in the run home. I look towards next week for both of these teams. Carlton have a Friday night blockbuster with Collingwood, who maybe aren't playing the best football, but it's first on the ladder versus 11th. Carlton will, you'd imagine, come in fired up, but hopefully they do better than they did on the weekend. And Port Adelaide travel up to the Gabba, and this is another almost do or die game for them. They almost all are from here on out, but this is a tough one. Brisbane Lions at the Gabba, second on the ladder versus 10th. So Carlton and Port Adelaide come out of this match and versus the first and second team. So that's an interesting little coinkydink there, but next week's going to be tough for both teams, I think. Doesn't mean they can't win them, but it's not going to be easy for them. I look at some of the best players in this game. Brownlow votes, I went Connor Rose 3, Zach Butters 2. They were both outstanding. Mitch Georgiadis gets the 1. And MVP votes, if you're new around here, we'll just give a quick explanation. We give top 5 players from every single game votes. Top 5 players from both teams votes in the MVP award every week. The winning team, top 5, get 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2. The losing team get half of that, so 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. That gives us our MVP votes. It's based on our rating system that we use here at All Aussie Rules. We rate every player, every single game, and that goes into this MVP. If you want to know more about the ratings, I plan on releasing some videos over the coming weeks, so make sure you do follow along. But also, if you are interested in that, jump in the comments below and let me know what you want to know. I am a pretty open book, and I will try and be as transparent as I can. Using the player ratings, we then get a team rating. Port Adelaide 47.37, which is a very solid number, well above their average for the year, so a good game from them. And Carlton 38.08 is a really poor performance. Anything under 40 is considered a pretty average game, especially when you go about -9 on the other team. So not a great night for Carlton. So the MVP votes, Port Adelaide, the winning team. Highest rated player was Connor Rose. Then it was Miles Bergman, Zach Butters, Mitch Georgiadis, and Esava Radigalia, who's putting together a good little patch of form over the last month or so. I was maybe a little bit harsh on him a few weeks back, thinking that perhaps he wasn't playing a great role, but he certainly is over the last few weeks. So he's proving me wrong and proving a lot of other people wrong as well, I think, at the moment. For Carlton, their top 5, George Hewitt again. He's been outstanding this year. Clearly Carlton's best player this year so far. Paddy Cripps, 4 votes. one of his better games, but it still wasn't outstanding. I think it was more the fact that Carlton just weren't that great. Zach Williams gets the 3. Nick Haynes, he's having an okay season, 2. And Sam Doherty gets the 1 vote. So that's the top 5 for both teams. An interesting game. It's one where we're basically now at the point where Carlton are just going to be a nuisance for other teams when they turn up and can beat them. Because, they're not playing finals this year. We can pretty much rule that one out. Still definitely feasible, but it's just not going to happen. And Port Adelaide's percentage is certainly going to hurt them. They're going to have to win some big games. Win a lot of games, but also win a few of them by big margins. So that will be tough for them, I think, but we'll see how that goes over the next 8 weeks. We'll move into game number 2 of the weekend. And this one was Sydney Bulldogs Friday night football. It was a good game. One of the games of the year so far. It was a cracker. You'll be struggling to find a better game than this one. Maybe the Collingwood Geelong one. There's probably been a handful of others that are maybe in the conversation throughout the year, but this is one of the better ones. It started well. Both teams kicking pretty accurately. Sydney struggled a little bit in the first quarter, but it was pretty high scoring for the first 3 quarters. It was only 9 points in it. It was 90-81 at 3-quarter time. Last quarter turned into a bit of an arm wrestle, and Sydney managed 2 goals 3, whereas the Bulldogs managed also 2 goals 3. So, it did quieten down a little bit late, but I think that's just because of how tight the contest was, and that's doesn't mean it wasn't a good quarter of football to watch. Interesting things from this game is probably that 3rd quarter and how ridiculous it was. The fact that we had 2 players just going nuts. Isaac Heaney for Sydney was mental. He kicked the first one of the quarter. He kicked another 3 after that, I think. So he got 4 goals for the quarter, which is unreal. He was pretty quiet throughout most of the first half, but he was... I think he'd already kicked 1 at that stage in the first half, but then that 3rd quarter he absolutely dominated. But on the other side of the park, Joel Frazier, he was the one doing all the damage. He kicked 3 goals for the quarter, including 2 in about the space of 2 minutes midway through that quarter. So two players just absolutely going for it, and it was very entertaining football. And Sydney, after being in front halfway through that 3rd quarter when Isaac Heaney and then James Rewbottom kicked goals, that kind of sparked the Doggies into life, and Bont in his 250th kicked 1 straight away, and then it was Frazier, and then it was Frazier, and then it was Harms, and then Heaney did get 1 back just before 3-quarter time, which did get him back to 9 points. But in the end of the day, I think the Bulldogs were probably the rightful winners in a lot of ways. Sydney did play absolutely well. Their pressure was huge in this game, probably their best pressure game they've played this year. Without looking at at the numbers for every single game, I would say on watching it, it probably felt like their best pressure game. And yeah, they took it right up to the Doggies, and it took the best of the Doggies to get the win in the end. Clearly, the best 2 players, I think, when you look at it, not necessarily ratings-wise, but the 2 most influential players on this game were Isaac Heaney and Joel Frazier, especially in that 3rd quarter. Look at some of the team stats in this one, and where the game was won and lost. Sydney didn't look after the ball too well, and that was probably a big issue for them. They did have an extra 4 inside 50s than the Bulldogs, but the ball was in the Bulldogs' forward half a lot more than Sydney, so 51.5% in the Bulldogs' end, which isn't a massive difference, but it's just a slight difference. Intercepts, the numbers weren't massive, 59 to 56 in favour of Sydney. Clearances +3 for Sydney as well. So a lot of these numbers are suggesting that Sydney perhaps could have and should have won this one. Shots at goal, 30 for Sydney, just 25 for the Doggies. So accuracy from the Bulldogs is what probably gets them over the line in the end. Expected score actually has Sydney winning this one by 10 points, so that's a 20-point turnaround on what the actual result was. Make of that what you will. In the end, scoreboard pressure is the greatest pressure, and Doggies had that most of the night. Transition numbers, pretty similar for both teams across the board, really. Sydney probably moved it slightly better overall in some ways, but their ability to chain to score was dead level for both teams, 25%, so 1 out of 4. Stoppage scoring, pretty similar, 44 to 47 in favour of Sydney. Turnover was 55 to 42 in favour of the Doggies. So they did score well from the turnovers they got, the Doggies. As I said, there was quite a fair amount of turnovers in this game. Sydney slightly had more interceptions, but didn't make it count because the Doggies managed to turn them into scores. Sydney were all forward half. Doggies were all defensive half scoring, really. 37 to 24 from defensive half in favour of the Doggies. And then forward half, it was 65 to 43 for the Swans. But also, the Doggies managed to score from centre bounce, and managed to score from centre bounce after a Sydney goal multiple times. They kicked 4 goals, 1 from the centre bounce in this game. So that was a crucial factor as well in this result. We look at the team ratings that we do here at All Aussie Rules. Sydney a 46-7, pretty good number for them. But more importantly, kept Bulldogs to a 43-2-3, which kind of goes against my thoughts of Bulldogs deserving the win, because maybe they didn't. Maybe if Sydney had a kick straight, they probably win this game. They wasted a few opportunities, whereas Bulldogs took all their opportunities most of the game, getting 16 goals from 25 shots. It's pretty good effort, pretty accurate. So +3 in the team ratings for Sydney. That's one of the bigger margins that we've had this year for a team to lose. So make of that what you will. Team ratings are not the be-all and end-all of a game of football, but it's just a little snippet at how the game went. Brownlow votes, I think Joel Frazier gets the 3. He was best on. He was Bulldogs' best player. He was the most important player. There's no doubt about it. Isaac Heaney, likewise for Sydney. He had 20-odd touches. I can't remember exactly the amount of disposals he had, but also kicked 5 goals. That third quarter was, without him, it was probably game over in favour of the Doggies. So he played absolutely outstanding. Lachlan Bramble, I've given the 1 to. The 1 vote could go to a whole range of people, whether it's Brodie Grundy. Errol Gordon was absolutely outstanding in his second game back from injury. And then on the side of the Bulldogs, Norton was very important up forward. Bailey Williams was good. Riley Sanders probably played his best game of his career so far. So the Doggies did have some good players as well. MVP votes for the losing team and the home team, Sydney Swans. Brodie Grundy rated really well in this. He's had a really, really good 6-week stretch. He gets the 5. Isaac Heaney, as we've said, we've talked about him enough probably already, but he gets the 4. Errol Goulden gets 3. He was outstanding. Chad Warner, a bit quiet at times, but I mean, he's always involved some way. He gets 2. Nick Blakey gets 1. He turned it over a few too many times, but his rating still was slightly good enough to get 1 vote. I think he was the 12th best player on the ground. Bulldogs, it was 10 to Joel Frazier, 8 for Aaron Norton, 6 for Lachlan Bramble, 4 for Bailey Williams, and 2 for Riley Sanders. I think that's everything we've got for this game. We'll just have a quick look ahead to next week and what that means for both of these teams. Bulldogs now sitting currently 6th on the ladder. That could kind of change depending what happens over in Fremantle land, I think. I don't know. Can that result change things? Let me just have a look. Yes, so if Fremantle beat St Kilda, they will jump above the Doggies, but either way, they're going to be 6th or 7th on the ladder at the end of this week. You got to take into account Gold Coast have played 1 less game and on equal wins with the Doggies at the moment. It's tightening up in this little, well, pretty much the whole top 8, to be honest. You take out Collingwood, and the 2nd through 9th is currently 1.5 games separating them. So it's going to be a tight race all the way to the finals at current pace, you would think, and that's going to be interesting. So that's where they are. Sydney, this loss might end their run as well as Carlton's. They're sitting slightly worse percentage than Carlton. They're certainly playing a lot better football than the Blues are at the moment, but they might have just left themselves too much. They're 6 wins, 9 losses. They would pretty much have to win every game on the way out. Maybe one loss, but they probably almost have to win every game going the rest of the way. These two teams, Bulldogs front up again on a Thursday night game. This time it's North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. 16th on the ladder. North Melbourne coming off a really bad loss, which we'll get to very shortly. You'd think the Bulldogs will be too strong there and really set themselves up for a real good crack at finals. Sydney, they don't play until Sunday. It's at the SCG against Fremantle. That is a huge game next week. Lose and it's all over for Sydney, whereas Fremantle went over to the SCG and did beat Sydney last year. They were the first team to do it. Last year they broke that really long win streak of Sydney's last year. So watch for Fremantle. I think they're not playing very good against St Kilda at the moment, but I would imagine Fremantle will do really well in that game. So that's what both of those two teams have next week, which, incidentally, no more buys. We're going to have 9 games of football next weekend, so that is exciting. We jump into the next game. It was Saturday football, the first of the Saturday games. And it was Melbourne versus the Gold Coast, up on the Gold Coast. If you just watched the first quarter, you would have said Melbourne lost this game by 200 points. It was a stinking first quarter from Melbourne. They did not look like they were even out there on the park. They couldn't move the ball. I think they only had 6 inside 50s. Gold Coast should have been further in front. They kicked 5 goals, 7, and missed a couple easy ones. But then after quarter time, it all changed. Melbourne managed 5 goals in the second quarter to be only 4 goals down at half time after being 36 points down at quarter time. Third quarter was, again, a little bit more in favour of Gold Coast, but then the final quarter, Melbourne turned it on again, managed to kick 5 goals, 6 to just 1-3 for Gold Coast in that final quarter, just to make the scoreboard look a lot more respectable. Only lost by 19 points in the end. You got to say it's a pretty solid result for Melbourne. I mean, their final chances are already gone. This is against a team that should be playing finals at home, so it's always going to be a tough match for Melbourne here, and I think you take out that first quarter, and they were pretty competitive the rest of the way through. So there's definitely some good signs, but in the end, Gold Coast, that's all you need to talk about really, because they are the ones that going forward you're going to be expecting to do a lot more. A look at some of the stats in this one. Disposal-wise, Melbourne actually had more of the ball, plus 20 disposals, but inside 50s went the way of Gold Coast, plus 7, was in Gold Coast forward half 56% of the time, so a fair chunk of it. The ball movement maybe not as big as normal, like the chain numbers and stuff were really good for Gold Coast. I don't think they got as many metres gained as they normally do. Plus 5 clearances for the Suns. Didn't look after the ball as well as maybe they would like. That was probably Melbourne's big thing. Their ability to intercept was pretty solid in this game. Shot numbers were almost identical. 31 for Gold Coast, just 30, or also 30 for Melbourne, so just 1 less. Suggests that maybe Melbourne should have been slightly more in this game. You take out that first quarter and Gold Coast were really good in front of goal. Tackle numbers pretty similar. Chain numbers, as I said, were pretty good for Gold Coast in all honesty across the board. Not too bad as well for Melbourne, just slightly down on most numbers. Scoring from stoppages, Gold Coast plus 12. Turnover was dead level, 42 apiece. So Melbourne didn't make Gold Coast pay with those intercepts too well. Scoring from defensive half, Melbourne did outstanding here. 6 goals, 8, 44. Plus 22 they scored from the defensive half, but they couldn't stop Gold Coast in that forward half. As I said, Gold Coast did have the ball in their forward half for like 56-ish 75% of the game time. So that usually equates to some high scoring from forward half. And this was exactly what happened here. 8-9, 57 to 4-4, 28. Gold Coast also managed 4 goals from centre bounce. Melbourne managed 2. So some big numbers around the grounds there. No matter which way you look at it, I think Gold Coast were clearly the better team, but I think Melbourne put up a better fight than a lot of people probably expected from them. And I mean, I genuinely thought they were going to lose by 150 after quarter time yesterday. They were shocking at quarter time, but they definitely turned that completely around for the rest of the game. So that was good from their side of things. We'll jump into some of the votes and stuff. I have actually changed my Brownlow votes for this game. I forgot to update the graphic. Matt Rowell gets the 3. Pickett gets the 2. Jack Melksham gets the 1. MVP votes, it was Matt Rowell gets 10, John Noble 8, Miller 6, Anderson 4, and Fiorini gets the 2. And then for Melbourne, the losing team, Pickett gets 5, Melksham gets 4. He was really good, especially in that second quarter, getting Melbourne back into the game. Petrarca gets 3, Jake Bowie gets the 2, and Maxi Gawn gets the 1. Team ratings 46.84, pretty solid for Gold Coast. 40.99 for Melbourne. Would have probably been a lot better if they had have played the first quarter. Anything else we need to talk about here? Maybe where they are on the ladder. Currently Gold Coast are 8th on the ladder, equal with the Bulldogs, who have obviously played an extra game, and GWS, who are 9th on the ladder. So pretty well in the race at the moment, 9-5. They're probably only maybe 4 wins away from almost guaranteeing themselves a final spot. So they've still got 9 games. Top 4 is still not out of the question here. I know they're sitting 8th at the moment, but they are literally 1 win behind 3rd, and they've played 1 less game. So things are pointing in a really good direction for the Gold Coast Suns right now. As I said, Melbourne's season is done. They're currently on 5 wins for the season. From 15 matches, you're just not playing finals there. They've lost their last 4, and things do not get easier for them next week, because they have a Sunday afternoon trip to the Adelaide Oval to play the Crows, who are currently in the top 4, so that will be a really tough assignment for Melbourne. I know they did really well at Adelaide Oval last year. I think they beat both Port and Adelaide in a 2-week stretch. But Adelaide are playing a lot better than they were last year. So that's going to be an interesting one, I think. But you'd have to think Adelaide will dominate the Demons. On the other side of the fence, Gold Coast, they head down to Melbourne and they play at Marvel Stadium against the Bombers. Important game for them. This is obviously a massive one. They win that one. They really are setting themselves up for this run home, because they do have 2 games against the Bombers coming up. Obviously, the postponed game from opening round is going to be played at the end of the season, but they have a really good opportunity here, and this is how it starts this week against the Bombers. Moving on to the next game. Well, the next one is Hawthorn North Melbourne. It was down at Utah Stadium in Launceston, and boy, oh boy, was this one a stinker. I was at this game, and it was not overly enjoyable. Hawthorn win at 150 to 65. Not quite the same margin that they had late last year when they met in round 24, but not that far off, in all honesty. It was one-way traffic from the start, and it was a tough watch. It was 20 points at quarter time. It was out to 51 points at halftime, and it just extended after that. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it, really. Game dominated by key forwards, but boy, oh boy, North Melbourne looked bad. It's funny how last week and last couple of weeks, North have looked quite good. Quite regularly looked quite good over the last maybe even 6-7 games. They beat Carlton last weekend, and then they came out. I know this is a harder team, against Hawthorn down in Tassie, but it was bad. It was really bad, let's be honest. Some key stats in this one to look at. Hawthorn had plus 40 odd disposals, 1,400 extra metres gained, 4% better disposal efficiency. Ball was in their forward half 55% of the time, plus 23 inside 50s. I don't know if I said that one or not. Plus 5 intercepts, Hawthorn. They had more marks, they had more contested marks, more intercept marks, 36 to 22 shots. They probably scored more than they should have, Hawthorn, based on how many shots and where the shots were. They were efficient, though. They were kicking them from everywhere. It was just one of those days where things were working out. If you go by most expected score markets, it's saying the margin should have been about 40. And maybe that would have been a more realistic thing. But this game was dominated by Hawthorn in the forward half and Hawthorn from the stoppage. They scored a 66 to 9 from stoppage in this game, Hawthorn. That is unreal. That is an absolute domination from stoppages. They were plus 14 clearances, so they did have plenty more opportunities, but they really turned them into good scores. Another crazy thing about this game is the scores from kick-ins. One of probably very close to, if it's not actually, the most amount of goals from kick-ins in a game, I reckon. Hawthorn had 2 straight, while North Melbourne got 3 straight from kick-ins. You don't see that too often. I mean, it's not like there was that many points kicked. Hawthorn kicked 12, North kicked 11. So some pretty good success rate there. Scoring from turnover was also good from Hawthorn, no doubt. There, 72 to 38. Defensive half was pretty even in terms of scoring, 46 to 42. But as we said, Hawthorn had the ball in their forward half a lot, and they dominated, scoring from that 79 to 22. Absolute domination. Another key stat here, North Melbourne started the season as a pretty good team at scoring from centre bounce. They weren't in this game. Hawthorn 25, North Melbourne 1 solitary point from the centre bounce. So no matter which way you spin this game, it was definitely Hawthorn the much better team. Kangaroos maybe missed some opportunities, and Hawthorn made use of every single one of their opportunities, but it was just, one-way traffic. Team ratings, Hawthorn rated a 51.19, really strong rating. North Melbourne a 36.31. As we said earlier, anything under 40 is really bad. Anything above 50 is a really good game. So no matter which way you look at it, you can only play as good as your opposition is, and sometimes it's a bit of both. What else do we need to discuss from this game? We might as well jump into Brownlow votes. I think Gunston gets the 3 for the first time in his career. He kicked 7 goals in a match. Absolutely outstanding. Jai Newcombe was probably the best midfielder for Hawthorn. Probably the best midfielder on the ground. And then Old Charl. He kicked 5 straight. He was really good. He's having a good little patch as well, I think. The last few games, he's really playing some good football. He had just 5 shots at goal for the game and kicked all 5 of them. He was really important in this game. 7 marks, 2 contested marks. So he was very good. MVP votes, 10 goes to Gunston, 8 to Chol, 6 to Carl Amon, who 2 games in a row down in Tassie has been pretty good. Jai Newcombe gets 4. Dylan Moore gets 2. And then on the other side of the fence for Kangaroos, it was Nick Larkey who ended up kicking 5 goals himself. 5 goals 3, so he could have had a day out if he had converted a couple more opportunities, but still a good game from him. Luke Parker gets the 4. Luke Davies-Yanaki was very good. He gets 3. Tristan Cherry gets the 2. And Caleb Daniel gets the 1. What else do we have to say about this game? Not too much, really, in all honesty. It was one-way traffic. It was a domination. That puts Hawthorn still in 5th on the ladder, equal on points with Adelaide and Geelong, who are sitting 3rd and 4th, just down on percentage, even though this was a definite percentage booster for them. They've won 3 in a row now. 2 games just before the bye against top 8 contenders, and then come out of the bye with a really strong win here. Massive for their season. North Melbourne sits 16th on the ladder. They're still only half a game behind both Melbourne and St Kilda. There's still a possibility that they could move up a couple spots. They would need a good finish to their year, but at the moment, I mean, this was a bad game, but I can still see them getting another couple wins. I think we said about 7 wins was par for them this year. They're currently 4.5, so they probably need another 3 to consider this a good year, I think. It's more than possible. They've got 8 games. It's not going to be easy. They're definitely going to have to play better than they did on Saturday, though. Coming up next week for both of these teams, North Melbourne have that Thursday night game with the Bulldogs. That will not be an easy one for them. I don't see a world where they can stop Norton and Sam Darcy. Norton looks so much better when he has Darcy out on the field with him, and I just don't see how they're going to stop Sam Darcy. He's so good. And then for the Hawks, they have a Saturday night game at Marvel Stadium, which will be interesting. They don't venture to Marvel too often. This one is against the Saints. St Kilda are a much better team at Marvel than they are anywhere else. They played tonight. They just went down to Fremantle in a pretty competitive game. They were pretty good against Collingwood last week. So St Kilda are starting to play some decent football. It'll be a tough one, though. Hawthorn have hit their straps, it seems. So it's not going to be easy for St Kilda. You'd think Hawthorn probably should win that one on paper. What have we got next? We'll move into the Saturday night game. It was top of the ladder v bottom of the ladder. Collingwood, West Coast. It was at Marvel Stadium. And boy, oh boy, did the Eagles give the Pies a scare. This was a weird game. Pretty dour game in the first quarter. West Coast 2-6 to Collingwood 1-3 to lead by 9 points. Then Collingwood absolutely turned it on early in the second quarter, and it looked like they'd woken up and were just going to run away with it. They kicked the first 4 of the second quarter through most of their tools. Charlie West kicked his first, Myercheck kicked one, Jamie Elliott got one, and they were up by close to 20 10 minutes into that second quarter, but then all of a sudden it went the other way. West Coast kicked the last 4 of the quarter through Liam Ryan, Brockman, Job Shanahan got his first goal, and then Tim Kelly got one as well. So they were then leading by 8 points at halftime in what was shaping up as potentially one of the all-time biggest upsets. Collingwood then did exactly what they did in the second quarter, again in the third. They kicked the first 4 goals of the quarter through Lipinski getting his second, Nick Dacos, Membry, and Hoskin Elliott, and once again up to that 15 to 20 point margin, and it looked like it was going to be over again. Then what happened? West Coast came back again. They kicked the last 2 of the not the last 2, sorry, but they kicked 2 late ones in the third quarter to get them within a kick, but then Dan Houston got one at just before 3-quarter time, and then that was basically probably the dagger. West Coast didn't kick a goal in the last quarter. Collingwood kicked 3 goals for, so ran away with it in the end. Not their best performance of all time, but they win it by 29 points. They get the 4 points. Just a little wake-up call, I feel, for Collingwood in this one. We have a look at some of the key stats from this game. What do we need to see? It was a weird game. Like, the scoreboard suggests that it was close, and I mean it was really in a lot of ways. West Coast had an extra 15 disposals than Collingwood. They had a very high handball game, West Coast, in this game, so that typically goes with more disposals. Collingwood did get an extra 600 metres gained. They did have an extra 5 inside 50s. They had the ball in their forward half 51.5% of the time. They had more contested football, Collingwood. So a lot of key numbers going the way of Collingwood. But the thing that Collingwood weren't so good in this game, which typically all season they have been very good at, is looking after the football. West Coast managed to get 69 intercepts, which against Collingwood is one of the highest numbers this season outside of wet weather games. Collingwood managed just 61, so that's a big difference here. Collingwood did win clearances, which doesn't happen all that often, certainly over the last 6 or so games. They won it by 12 in the clearance numbers. First possession, plus 20 for Collingwood as well. So they were getting their hands on the footy a lot. 28 shots to 21. Expected score, 10-point win for Collingwood. It's basically Collingwood should have won and did win, but it wasn't a pretty game or result for them in any stretch of the imagination. West Coast dominated those turnover numbers but couldn't put the score on the board from it, just managing 36 points, whereas Collingwood got 54 from 9 less intercepts. From stoppage, Collingwood were plus 12 clearances and turned it into plus 13 points for the game, so pretty even across the board. It was forward half, that's where Collingwood do their best work week in, week out, and they did it again here, scoring 47 to 17 in this match. So not massive scoring from that, but they did certainly outscore their opposition from forward half scoring, and that was a massive key for Collingwood winning this one. You look at the team rating and it suggests that Collingwood should have won maybe by more. So they did have some good players that played really well, which makes you wonder why the game was so close, because their best players did play pretty well. 47-6-8 is a pretty solid number. 42-05 is actually pretty good for West Coast. I think they only get over 40 about half of their games, so not a bad result from West Coast. I think they tried their best, tried their hardest, and put their best foot forward and nearly managed to get the win. They certainly sent a scare through Collingwood fans. Brownlow votes, I think Scott Pendlebury maybe gets the 3. It's going to be him and Nick Dacos fighting out for the 3 and the 2. I think they were the best 2 players on the ground. Brady Howe gets the 1 for West Coast. And then MVP votes, it goes 10 to Scotty Pendlebury, who plays perhaps his best game of the season this year with 28 touches and a goal. Really good game from him. And then Jack Crisp gets the 8. He was good again. He's having a good season. Nick Dacos gets the 6. He could have had an all-time game here. He had 34 touches, 1 goal, 3. He had 5 shots for the match. One of them was from about 55, 60 metres after the siren. But 1 goal, 3. If he had a kick 3-1 with 34 touches, that would have been a huge, huge game. And Darcy Cameron, he's having a great season. He gets the 4. Paddy Lipinski, 2 games back from his concussion, have been his best 2 games this season. He is starting to put together a little bit of good form, playing as that half forward role. Had 19 touches, kicked 2 goals in this game, so another good week from him. For West Coast, it was Brady Howe gets the 5 votes. He was very solid. Had 27 touches, was very good. Kicked a goal as well. Liam Baker gets the 4. Tom McCarthy in his second game, after having 30-something touches in his debut, has 29 this week as well. So he's playing absurdly good for a 2-gamer that wasn't even on a list 4 weeks ago. That's huge. Liam Duggan gets the 2, and Ryan Marrick continues his good season. He gets 1 vote. That's that game. We move into the next one, and it's Richmond Adelaide. This was Sunday. I was going to say morning. It was Sunday afternoon, though. It was definitely Sunday afternoon. Oh, we forgot to talk about Collingwood and West Coast's position on the ladder, so maybe we should quickly run through that. Collingwood sit first on the ladder. They're, 2.5 games clear of Brisbane. They're 3 games clear of 3rd place. After 15 games, they're shaping up as, you'd have to think, a top of the ladder team at the end of the season. Things can fall apart very quickly, though, so let's not count our chickens before they hatch, but they're certainly shaping their season very nicely at the moment. Meanwhile, West Coast, they're sitting the exact opposite end. They're 18th on the ladder, bottom of the ladder, 1 win, 14 losses, and it's been a while since they managed to last get a win. Next week for both of these teams, Collingwood have the Friday night game against Carlton at the MCG. It's an important game for Collingwood, I think. Carlton were going to come out fired up, ready to go. Surely. I thought that this week and it didn't happen, but surely this time it does. So that's what I'm thinking for that one. And then at the exact same time, starting 1 hour later, so just as it's probably getting close to half-time of the Collingwood game, Collingwood-Carlton, West Coast start their game over in the West against GWS. Is a home game for the Eagles, but You'd think GWS coming out of their bye are going to be ready to go. It won't be an easy one for them, but who knows how that one will play out. Surely, if West Coast can play as good as they did on the weekend, maybe they get an opportunity coming out of the bye against GWS. Who knows? Now we will move to the final day of games. It was Richmond Adelaide first up. Domination by Adelaide. 18-14, 122 to 8-6, 54. It was one-way traffic in this game. We expected this result, and it's the result we got. In all honesty, it was over. The first quarter was low scoring, 2-5 to 0-1, but by halftime she was well and truly over. 55 to 14. It was out to 85 to 32 at three-quarter time, and then finished up winning it comfortably enough by 68 points. Not an all-time performance by the Crows, but they certainly got the job done when they needed to. Ended up kicking 18 goals, 122. They are a high-scoring team when they're at their best, and this was some of that here. A look at some of the key stats in this one. Adelaide plus 90 in disposals, plus 19 inside 50. So they did dominate the ground. They did dominate the possession. Richmond were really good out of clearance, especially centre clearance, plus 5 centre clearances. But outside of that, it was one-way traffic. Domination of contested and uncontested football for Adelaide, and they looked after the ball really well. Just 52 turnovers for the match for the Crows, 70 for the Tigers. Which goes against what both of these two teams typically do. Richmond actually have been pretty good at looking after the ball this year, but they did not manage that today. And meanwhile, Crows, who sometimes have been a little bit prone to turning it over quite a lot, both ways to be fair, getting a lot of intercepts but also turning it over a lot. This game, they looked after it really well. They went 15 under their average, which is slightly inflated due to multiple wet games, but still a really solid showing. They did what they needed to do. They came out and they got it done. I don't have full stats on this one, so I don't have scoring stats just yet, but it was pretty comprehensive across the park. You look at the team rating there, Richmond a 35.5, which is below their average. Adelaide a 52.14 is a really solid rating. I think they've had the most amount of 50-plus games of any club this season in terms of ratings. Their best is very good. Unfortunately, sometimes their worst has not been great, but that's okay. You accept that sometimes. It's all about trying to get yourselves into the best form heading into finals, and this was a good little shake-up and heading forwards for them. Brownlow votes, I've gone Dan Curtin with 3. He was outstanding. There's no doubt about it. He was very good in this one. I think he ended up with 26 touches and 2 goals. He also had 3 goal assists. So he was very important in this game right from the start. He's started this game really well and continued it on. Jordan Dawson, I've given the 2 votes. He had 26 touches, 7 clearances, 2 goal assists. He was very crucial. And Riley Thilthorpe, I've given the 1 vote for. He had 16 touches, 5 goals, and a couple goal assists as well. So everyone hitting the scoreboard, everyone helping out, giving goal assists. It was just a really clean performance from the Crows. MVP votes for the losing team, Richmond. It went Sam Banks 5, Toby Nankervis 4, Dion Prestia, after a quiet game last week, was back to close to his best with a 3. Jack Ross 2, Hugo Ralphsmith gets the 1. Over in Adelaide land, it went 10 for Daniel Curtin, 8 for Riley Thilthorpe, 6 for Jordan Dawson. Josh Worrell gets the 4, and Mitchell Hinge gets 2. Worth noting from this game that, in all honesty, surely Tom Lynch is going to get suspended. He had one of the all-time worst first halves and decided after giving away 5 free kicks that he'll also smack some bloke in the head. So he's probably going to get at least a few weeks, you'd have to think. But sometimes you just never know with the AFL, the tribunal and the match review panel. Who knows what's going to happen. But I would imagine he won't be playing for the next few games. He had one of the worst first halves you'll ever see. Did kick a goal in the second half, though. So that's everything from that game. We'll just have a quick look at where that puts these two teams. Adelaide now third on the ladder. They jump over Geelong with their very good percentage. Best percentage in the AFL right now is with the Adelaide Crows. They are dominating both offensively and defensively across the year. All things going really well for them. Richmond, they're 17th on the ladder. That's probably where they're going to finish. As it stands, I can't see West Coast getting 2 wins to jump them, but maybe they can. But I can't see Richmond getting another 2 wins to jump ahead of North Melbourne. So I think they're fighting for 17th and 18th are Richmond and the Eagles. It's been a while since I've won a game now. They started their season pretty well, probably over what most people expected. But these are more the results we expected to see from the Tigers this year. They certainly have been more competitive than a lot of people thought they would be, including myself. But they're putting together, they're trying hard. They just don't quite have that class just yet. But give them a couple of years and we'll see how we're going. On to next week for both of these teams. Richmond, they head down to the Cattery for a Saturday evening 4:15 kickoff against the Cats. That's going to be a tough game. You'd have to think Geelong are going to be too strong for the Tigers in that one. Meanwhile, Adelaide, they don't play until Sunday afternoon. It'll be an afternoon game, 3:15, over at Adelaide Oval against Melbourne. They will go in pretty strong favourites in that one and a really good chance to try and put a little bit of a gap on some of these other chasing teams. However, if you look at next week's schedule, it's pretty much all top 8 teams versus bottom 10 teams. Pretty much across the board. I don't think any two top 8 teams are playing another top 8 team. And in fact, no top 9 team is playing another team in the top 9. So that's a crazy little thing that's popped up, I guess, this week, is that, or next week, round 17, is it's like the top 9 all playing games that they should win, which kind of keeps us in the same status as we are now. But if any of them do go down, which is possible, Fremantle are going to be outsiders in their game at the moment, it looks like. They might be the only top 9 team that is an outsider for this weekend. They are. But it's going to be an interesting week, so we'll see how that shapes up. Alrighty then, final game of the round is Fremantle St Kilda. It was Sunday evening over in the West, and this one nearly was another upset. We've had a couple close calls this weekend, but none of them quite got there. It was kind of close all game. Both teams kicked poorly in front of goal. 11-15, 81 for Fremantle. 9-15, 69 for St Kilda. Late in the third quarter, though, St Kilda went bang, diddy bang, bang, bang through Dan Butler, Maxwell, Isaac Keeler, and then they even got the first of the last quarter through Jackie Boy Higgins to give themselves like I won't say a comfortable lead, but a 14-point lead early on in the last quarter. And it looked a possibility that they were going to get the win over in the West, which would have been huge for them, especially seeing only a month or so ago they lost to West Coast over there. So this would have been a huge win based on that. But then from that point on, it was Fremantle time. And the tools, the ruckman, the dual ruckman of Freo got it done. Darcy, Luke Jackson, Tracy, Isaiah Dudley, all kicking goals, bang, bang, bang. Mitch Owens kicked one with very little time to go, just to give him a little sniff, but then on the siren, basically, Luke Jackson gets his second of the final quarter, give himself a decent game in the end, and Fremantle walk away. Thanks to a 5-goal, 5 final quarter, when they only kicked 11-15 for the match, shows how much work they did in that final quarter. Meanwhile, St Kilda couldn't quite get it done, only kicking 2-3 in the final quarter. So that's a little wrap of how the game went. A look at some of the key stats in this one. St Kilda had more of the ball, plenty more of the ball. An extra 40-odd disposals. Overall, inside 50s and forward half-time were both Fremantle, inside 50s +8, plus they also had 52.5% of the ball in their forward half. So they did control the ground pretty well. Overall metres gained was slightly in favour of Fremantle. Typically goes to the winning team, that stat. Massive difference here in intercepts, and that is the difference in this one. So Freo had 63 intercepts, St Kilda just 48. Massive difference between the two teams there. Clearances, usually an area that Fremantle's pretty good at. Last year they were the best. This year they sit around the mid-mark, but usually still in the positives. They got smacked in it here. +15 clearances for St Kilda, including really good centre clearance work. So that initial clearance work was really good by St Kilda. Total shots for the game. Fremantle had 31, only managed to kick 11 goals. That's not good enough, and that will hurt you against good teams. Luckily for them, St Kilda didn't make them pay. St Kilda had 23 shots, so also kicked poorly, but probably not as bad as the Dockers. That will tell you the expected score winner was Fremantle. Not by much, about 16 odd points. Scoring sources, I guess we start with. From stoppage, we said St Kilda were dominant from clearances. Their scoring didn't reflect, I think is what I was going for. That as much. 4-7-31 for St Kilda and 2-8-20 for Fremantle. So both teams kicked poorly, to say the least, from stoppages. Turnovers, as we said, the numbers were massively in favour of Fremantle in this, and they converted it. 61-36, so +25 points from turnover. That's your game right there. That's the difference. That is what cost St Kilda here. Defensive half scoring was pretty similar, 36-28. Same story for forward half, 37-33, both in favour of Fremantle. And then both teams scored 8 points from the centre bounce. That's all the key stats for you. Team ratings end up being St Kilda rating higher, a 43.12, which is one of the lower scores you'll see for a winning team this year. Wasn't a fantastic performance by them, but Fremantle were worse in team ratings. 41.8 just shows that team ratings don't matter that much. Sometimes I think St Kilda will be kicking themselves that they didn't make Fremantle pay for their poor kicking, but St Kilda did the same thing. Brownlow votes, this could go to any one of 8 players for all the positions. I struggled with it for a fair while. Jordan Clark I've given 3. There's a chance that Luke Jackson sneaks in there thanks to his final quarter heroics. But I've gone Clark 3, Nashaya Wanganeen, Malira with 2, and Rowan Marshall 1. All 3 ruckmen in this game. Luke Jackson didn't play a heap of ruck time, I don't think, but all 3 of them, the 2 Freo ones and the St Kilda one, all in the top 5 or 6 players on the ground, which just goes to show what sort of game it was here over in the West. MVP votes, we've gone for Freo, have Jordan Clark on top. He was their highest rated player. Luke Jackson 8, Sean Darcy 6, Josh Tracy gets the 4, and Caleb Sarong gets 2. Over on the other side of the fence for St Kilda, it was Rowan Marshall, who was the highest rated player on the ground, gets the 5. Max Hall 4, Nashaya Wanganeen Malira gets the 3, Jack Steele gets 2, and Hugo Garcia gets the 1. I think that's everything we have for that game. We'll jump into where that places both these teams. Fremantle gets them in the 8. My ladder hasn't updated. There it is. They're at 6th on the ladder. Their percentage isn't spectacular, but they are only half a game out of 2nd spot. It's a logjam. There's no doubt about it. The difference between 2nd and 9th right now is crazy. Every win matters very importantly. So I think that's huge reason why all these wins right now are massive. Especially when you consider one of the teams that's a win behind them but percentage above them has played one less game in Gold Coast. So very important that they win all of these games. For St Kilda, they're sitting 15th on the ladder. We know where they are. Their season's pretty much done. They're still fighting along. They occasionally play some good football. Their last 2 weeks have been really good after a bad game 3 weeks ago. So it's all about development for them right now. And this one and the game against Collingwood last week were certainly much better, improved performances as a team. They just need to find a way to, I guess, fast-track this development a little bit more, I think, because otherwise the rate that other teams rise and fall, you only get a small window. So who knows? We'll see what it means for St Kilda going forward, but they have definitely been better over the last couple of weeks. We look forward to next week for both of these teams. Fremantle, they head to the SCG for Sydney. Massive, massive game. They did win over there last year. They can effectively completely finish Sydney's season right here and there. Sydney's season's probably already done, but this would officially nip it in the bud. That's Freo. St Kilda, they have a similarly tough task. It is at the Marvel Stadium. It is at Marvel Stadium, which is positive for them, but they've got the Hawkers. Tough one coming up for the Saints. Make of that what you will, but it's going to be a tough one, no doubt. If they can put in another solid performance like they did last week against Collingwood at Marvel, I think that would be a massive, massive thing for St Kilda. That is all 7 games. There's only 7 games this weekend. All 7 games are wrapped up. All the votes, all the best players, all the best teams. Let's jump into how my tips went. And I mean, most people are going to be on 7. Some people will get 6 this week, but most people will be on 7, I reckon. It was let's just say, a pretty simple week, how it unfolded. Port Adelaide beat Carlton on Thursday night. They obviously won by a lot more than the 13 points that I suggested. They won by 50 in the end, but we get the tick. Western Bulldogs won that one by 9 points, so a bit less than my 21. Gold Coast won by 19. Jeez, I'm going the wrong way every single time. But Gold Coast got the win. Hawthorn absolutely dismantled North Melbourne by a lot more than we said. They won by 85. Collingwood won by a lot less. They won by just 29. And then today's games, or yesterday's games at time of release of this podcast episode, Adelaide won by 68, so we get that one. And Fremantle won by 12. That gives us 7 of 7 for the week. Let's go us. I mean, it was a pretty simple week, though. And for the season, we're 90 out of 134 on the podcast. My actual tipping is up to 96, though. Just goes to show that I make changes after the podcast, and it tends to work out pretty well for me. We now move across into the Brownlow medal. This is our leaderboard after round 16. Obviously, no Gold Coast Essendon players have played one less game. But other than that, every other team is now a level on matches. Buys are done. Thank goodness. That is a positive. So Jordan Dawson out in front on 21. Caleb Sarong sitting in second now on 20. Nick Dacos and Bailey Smith equal on 18 in third place. Then we got Max Holmes and Connor Rose both on 17, sitting in 5th. George Hewitt and Jai Newcomb both on 16, sitting in 7th. In 9th spot is Andy Brayshaw with 15. And then equal 10th is a 4-way tie. Matt Rao and Noah Anderson both from Gold Coast. Maxi Gawn and Zach Butters. All 4 of those are sitting on 14 votes according to the All Aussie Rules prediction model. It's not a perfect system, but I think it will go pretty well come Brownlow night later on this year. Don't forget, before we jump into our MVP leaderboards, to hit that like button if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, follow the podcast depending what platform you're on, and jump in the comments below and let me know how you went with your tips this week. Did you get all 7? And finally, let's look at the MVP voting leaderboard before we wrap up this episode. We ran through how the voting works at the start of this episode, so go back and check that out if you skip past it. After round 16, Bailey Smith obviously had the bye this week, but he holds on to the lead on 78. Tristan Cherry, second place, 74.5. Then it's Hugh McCluggage, 1 vote behind on 73.5. Couple Dockers, Brayshaw and Sarong both on 73. Maxi Gawn and Connor Rose on 72. Noah Anderson on his own, lonesome on 71. Matt Rouse 70. A couple Gold Coast boys. Well and truly in the fight, especially when you consider they've played one less game so far. Nick Dacos is on 68. And then the third docker on the leaderboard is Luke Jackson. What a run he's having at the moment. He's on 66. Maxie Holmes also 66. And Tom Green on 66. And then to round out the top, I think it's 15, Jordan Dawson and George Hewitt, both on 65. So still plenty to play for. I also use this same voting system for the team best and fairest come the end of the year. So, I mean, you can tell a lot of the club's leaders, at least, based on that leaderboard. Not every team has a player in there. I might do that in the preview episode coming up for round 17 on Thursday. I might just run through each club's top 3 players or something along those lines. So come back, make sure you see that. We do a preview episode every single Thursday for the round coming up. So that will go live on Thursday morning, round 17 preview. Make sure you come back and check that out. Hopefully we can find you all 9 winners. Bye rounds are finally done, so we'll be checking that out. Other than that, if you are not on the YouTube channel, go check it out. There's plenty of content over there, as well as on the social medias, whether that's X, TikTok, Instagram. We're posting stuff every single day. Blue Sky as well, we have that. So go check them out. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments below. If you did, this is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We'll be back in a few days with the Round 7 preview.